It's called Flowers. You are listening to Group Chat. This is Mobeen Azhar. We are at the start, pretty much, of Men's Mental Health Awareness Week. Can't get my words out. Men's Mental Health Awareness Week. There, I got it right. It's an important week. It's an important week for conversations. It's an important week for men to be able to express themselves. Mental health is a subject we've come back to a lot on this show over the months, over the years, because it's important, and also it's really important to instigate a conversation. It's something that I think men generally are not great at speaking about how they feel and about their mental health. I would argue, and this is anecdotal, that there are cultural aspects in particular communities. I would say in the Desi community, we are quite patriarchal and prescriptive about what a man is and what a man should talk about and act like and behave like. But of course, mental health does not discriminate. So no matter where you're from and how much privilege you have and what race you are and how much money you have have mental health problems. And you might need some support. So tonight's show is all about having a conversation, and you can get involved. 81869 is the number to text. You can tweet at BBC Asian Network. I think I've got Super Joshi on the line. Super Joshi, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's really good to have you with us. I think we've played a couple of your tunes on the show. Where in the world are you right now?
West London, near Wembley.
Near Wembley, very good. And have you? Is it a lovely night out your window? Can you see anything out your window?
Yeah, it's just beautiful. It's trees and a nice warm sky.
Very good. I
like the summer, so I'm happy.
Yes, I like the humidity. I wish there was a window in my studio right now, but there isn't. But don't worry, I'll get some fresh air later. We've got Richard on the line as well. Richard, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm amazing. Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm really good. Where in the world are you, and what can you see out your window?
Okay, well, at the moment I can see some wooden blinds, and I can see some trees and sort of like some cars and so on.
Yes.
I'm in a place called sunny Walthamstow.
Ah, Walthamstow. You're an East Ender. Way out.
Exactly.
East End, wicked. I used to live in Walthamstow many moons ago. There you go. So, Super Joshi and Richard, you might have heard a little bit earlier, we were speaking to Dr. Saf, we were speaking to Joggy. They were sharing a lot of detail about their mental health journeys and where they are and what they've overcome, and the crossroads that they described it being at every day and the choices they make. And so, Super Joshi, if I can start with you, I want you to be as open as you possibly can and tell me about some of the challenges you've faced and where you've assessed your mental health.
I mean, for me, it's probably it's a tale of, I guess, kind of the psychological affecting the physiological. In that, like, you know, I was ill physically because of sort of not, I guess not being right in the head is probably the way to describe it. You know, I lost my voice, and it was eventually from silencing myself, and it was a stress-related illness, amongst other things. And then putting more pressure on myself kind of delayed the recovery, essentially, is what kind of happened. And it just so happens that I have kind of a parallel with my granddad, and I know we've been talking about I guess the stigma, but you know, he kind of blew me away. About 3 years ago, he was diagnosed with depression, and he said to me, you know, in Punjabi, he said to me, you know, mentally I'm not well. He said, mentally my teaching, and I was like blown away. I was like, dude, like I'm quite amazed that you just said that to me. And he was telling everyone, and I thought that was quite refreshing. And it was quite it kind of encouraged me. Then actually, it's, you know, it's more okay to talk about it. Not that I didn't think it was anyway, but.
That is quite amazing for a man of that generation to say mentally mentally I'm not well. That is a really big deal. Yeah. Super Joshi, I want to go one stage back. You said your psychological state was affecting your physical health, and speak about this as much or as little as you want to. I want you to be comfortable in terms of your well-being. Were there particular things, particular experiences that had affected your mental health? Have you ever been able to kind of identify those triggers?
I think it was a combination of things. It's partly not living my truth, and you know, ultimately what helped me was you know, I guess coming out as creative.
Right. Okay.
And I, you know, I actually bizarrely through this journey, I found I found empathy with others, and when I did that, I found empathy with the gay community, because I realised like what they go through. I was like, although some of the things are the same, like parents will say, what are people going to say, and what about family? So it's kind of
That's amazing. So when you say you came out as a creative, because I know you as a musician, but but prior to that, what were you doing if you weren't having a creative side to yourself? What were you doing?
Well, I mean, I was always like I was making music, and I'd worked in other kind of media stuff before, but I had a day job where I was essentially traveling around Europe a lot of the time, dealing with clients, kind of in a commercial role in the commercial world, because I was told, you can't music doesn't pay, you can't be creative, this is the only way. I just didn't know that, and there was something inside me that said, no, this isn't the only way. And I think ultimately what happened is my body shut down to the point where I was forced to have no option. I couldn't really continue in my role the way I was. I was just making myself worse. And when I did leave my job, my health dramatically improved. And I'd been at a point where I'd lost my voice for 2 months straight, not talking at all, and then followed up with speech therapy. At the point, the doctors were actually telling me, no, it's just a virus. But after the 5th visit, in about as many weeks, I was like, no, this is something different. Referred, camera up my nose, and then speech therapy. And that made a big difference. But at the same time, I was still then taking kind of a slightly less paid job to ease off the stress, but it wasn't really working. And like sports people, sometimes they're like a bit hesitant to go into a tackle if they got an injury. I was the same with my voice, and I had to learn again. And I went to see a therapist, like a proper therapist, if that makes sense. Yeah. And that was kind of really the start of the end of the work. And one of the things she said to me is, you need to write, you need to free your voice, because you're holding yourself back, and you're just kind of going in a downward spiral. You're getting more and more depressed, and things are just getting worse for you.
Super Joshua, you probably noticed everyone we've spoken to tonight, there is a pivotal shift, and that pivotal shift often involves a therapist or talking to someone. So I appreciate these commonalities, and I think there's some wisdom in that. Stick with us because I want to know what happened next. But Richard, if I can bring you in, tell me about your journey with identifying your triggers and being able to assess your mental health.
Yeah, well, for me, it's been an ongoing journey. From a young age, I was very different. So I'm dyslexic, so I couldn't read and write at school, and that was something from a young age. So I had stuff going on with self-esteem and not fitting in, not being part of, not being included. People laughing at me when I was trying to read out in front of people, and that was right up until I got kicked out of school when I was 15. So realistically, that was really my sort of like start in life, and so I had to work through a lot of stuff. So it wasn't until I was in my 30s really, and I opened my business, then I had no boundaries, and that was really where things come to a head, and I really hit my rock bottom.
What did that rock bottom look and feel like?
It was my personal hell. It was my personal hell. I went to hell in my head. I went to hell in my body. Hell existed in me, and it was a very dark place. And that was really, where I was at. And a lot of things have happened before that. And then I started to slowly climb out of that hell into something which now I call my heaven. Right.
Richard, when you speak about being younger and being, I guess effectively what you're talking about is being judged. And it's interesting because, Richard, are you white? I'm assuming you're white. Are you white?
I am indeed, yes.
Yeah. The reason I reference that is quite often, particularly I'd say in kind of 2021 discourse, we'll talk about privilege and we'll talk about particular communities or particular people. And there's almost like a kind of hierarchy of need. And Richard, I think what you illustrate is this idea that you might be a man and you might be, I don't know if you're straight or gay or how you identify, but you might be a white man and you might be straight. that doesn't mean you're going to have an easy life. It absolutely doesn't. And it is very difficult, and I'd say very dangerous actually, to pass judgment on someone and pass judgment on someone's where they've come from and how easy or difficult their life has been. And I think you're probably an embodiment of that, because when a lot of people talk about prejudice or feeling judged, they'll talk about it because of, and rightly so, they'll talk about it because of their race or their sexuality or their gender. And I want to know, for you, what was that based on? Was it a class thing? Like, what was it? Or was it to do with, as you said, you were dyslexic? Was it to do with that?
Well, it's to do with lots of different things. I've you know, as a middle-aged now, I don't like saying that, but I am white straight man. I've had lots of prejudice towards me, and from the white community, from all different types of communities growing up. I grew up in a very multicultural background. I used to work in a barber shop in Midland Road, which was in Bedford, which was very multicultural, and I went through lots of different things, and I experienced lots of different judgments and you know, discrimination and all sorts of stuff, and even by my peers who I knew for 6 or 7 years, you know, because I didn't go to a certain private school, or I didn't go to, you know, I didn't fit in with these people. Even though I'd started my business and done all this stuff, I was still segregated as being different.
Yeah.
So I've gone through all of that as well. It's a very common thing that I identify with people, and I think, well, I experienced this too.
I think you're spot on, Richard. And I think one of the big themes that comes out of this evening, and it comes out whenever we do these shows actually, is the power of being able to have a conversation and to move away from that surface level judgment and actually understand a person. Now, Richard, I know a lot of your work now is about encouraging people to actually speak, and you do that within the context of the barbershop. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I've been a barber from the age of 12, sweeping the floors, right? You know, and I've worked all my life in this experience of being around men and talking to men and so on. So it's quite natural for a man to open up to his barber. And because you don't know them, or they don't know your wife or your life or your friends at work, they feel that they can open up and talk to you. So for the years where I was a barber and serving clients, basically I used to have some amazing relationships with people, and people used to open up to me, and I had a very, towards the end of my barbering career, high level net worth, very famous, you know, wealthy people. I didn't start there, but that's where I ended my barbering career. And a lot of these people would open up to me and tell me stuff what they wouldn't tell anyone else. And they used to share these secrets and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, safe to say to all them people, what's ever said in a barbershop stays in a barbershop.
So they really, really trusted you. I mean, you make it sound like therapy, really. I mean, do you think that's part of it, even if it wasn't intentional? Just a space in which people can vocalize. Does it end up being a massive release?
Well, you think about it, like, you know, most men who have hair go to have their hair cut. So they sit there for half an hour and you've got this void, and people start to open up, you know, talk. Some people talk, some people don't. But most of the people you strike that rapport with, they open up. So, yeah, I think it's part of that therapy and part of that, you know, sort of communication and building rapport with people. And I used to do that, and I used to have some amazing relationships with people for many, many years, and I'm still very fond of now. So once we started getting into the mental health aspect, it was really a natural progression into that.
Yeah, I can completely see that. Super Joshi, do you, when you think about this particular period of crisis that you went through, did you have someone who you were expressing yourself to? Did you have that kind of outlet?
Not really, because no one really understood what I was going through, and I would argue that I'm still kind of, every day is a work in progress, right? Because there's still kind of, if I can use this word flippantly, PTSD. I know people go through a lot worse stuff, but yeah, I kind of withdrew. because I wasn't really able to talk to as many people, and I'm only now kind of coming out my shell again. Actually, I withdrew to myself and from my friends, personal family relationships, even romantic relationships, that all kind of struggled as a result of it. And so you do kind of become more isolated. I mean, I suppose the bonus of that is I kind of learned to deal with myself, learned my head better, and learned to cope with my own company, which I found now that people in the pandemic have really struggled with. So, I mean, I think that's the silver lining for me.
There was something there. I just want to go back a stage, though. So when you talk about not being able to have that conversation because no one really understood what you were going through, there is, if someone was to be kind of a bit callous about it, they'd say, well, they weren't going to know because you needed to tell them. And I'm sensing that perhaps you not being able to express yourself was motivated by fear. And I'm saying that through personal experience. I will say there's been times where I've wanted to say something, but I've been scared of judgment. That's just my experience. For you, Super Joshi, was it about fear of judgment? Why were you not able to express yourself?
I was talking about when I was physically unable to. I was talking about that bit.
Right. But if
you were talking about before that,
exactly before that. So in the periods where you weren't able to express your desires to be creative, you described coming out as a creative later. When you couldn't have those conversations, aside from the physicality, what about the psychology of it? Was it because of fear of judgment, or what was the issue?
Yeah, fear of judgment, things you kind of learn and have to unlearn. There's, I guess, maybe you kind of taught to be obedient brown boys or whatever. I wasn't particularly rebellious, and just kind of just not answering back, I suppose. And now I'm a bit more free with my opinions. Yeah, basically.
That's a good place to be. Richard, do you think you had a fear of being judged by people, and kind of how did you get to the point where you can speak on national radio and share some quite intimate details?
Yeah, I think after a while, right? For me, it's about a situation where you it's about helping others, right? And I was sitting there with Prince William, one of the highlights of my career. And sorry to name drop, but it's true.
Go for it.
And we were in Paddington, and in my business, and it's one of the stores based in Paddington, and we had this mental health awareness day in 2019, and it was an epic day. And I was sitting there, I was listening to Prince William in my store with a group of other men. And
I'm just really curious, Rich. What is the store? What is the business?
It's called Pall Mall Barbers.
So it's a barber shop, but do you still do the barbering?
No, I've stepped back now, and I'm a CEO and sort of ambassador for the business. Yes. I still own it and so on. But we have 6 stores in London and 1 in Fifth Avenue in New York.
Amazing. So you're sitting there with Prince William.
We're sitting there with Prince William. I'm just sort of like, I'm standing actually, they're sitting. And Prince William starts talking about his struggles with mental health and the situation with his mum passing away and all these things, what happened, this life of hate, online hate, and things about, welcome to his world, because every day he gets that and he has these threats and all this kind of stuff. And I was sitting there and he opened up and I thought, you know what, if it's all right for him to open up, it's all right for me to open up. And I think the key to a lot of things is really about, if you're honest from your soul to people, you give them the opportunity to be honest to you. And you lead by example. And I think it's a very powerful thing, because people start talking back to you and saying, oh yeah, I had this issue, or I had this sort of issue. I had a situation in November recently where I found a lot of online hate around me. And that was probably one of the darkest places I went for years. And I pulled myself out of it. And the reason why I'd done that is because I spoke to my parents, I spoke to people around me, I spoke to my sister, I spoke to some friends, and I put the right actions in and slowly started to pull myself, back to being normal. And I think this is a really powerful thing.
It is, absolutely. I've got the same question for both of you, really. But Richard, if I could ask you first of all, in terms of where you are right now, it's a very difficult question, actually. Are you happy?
Who are you going to go to first?
Richard, that's for you. Are you happy?
You know what? I'm more than happy. I'm ecstatic, and I think I'm living my purpose. And I'm really excelling in sort of giving back to people and trying to add value to people's lives and trying to be helpful as much as I can to others. And I think that once you find that purpose and you're on the right path, I think you feel fulfilled, and nothing else can give you that. Nothing material, nothing ever can give you that feeling where you're actually fulfilling your purpose.
That is really brilliant.